Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Your Spiritual Journey. This is Dr. Bob, and this is the space and the place where we talk about things important to your soul. As always, we hope that you'll subscribe, like us, maybe leave us some comments, and even support us on Patreon. Today's guest is somebody who's a little different as a medium, and we've had some mediums on this show before. The most recent one was Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer. I think he was episode 120 or 121. I'm not sure about that. But Carol Palmer is an evidential medium, and what I found about her that intrigued me so much was that she's a medium who does this for free. And I thought, wait a minute. I know quite a few mediums, and they try to make a living at this, and nobody does this stuff for free. But as she talks, you'll learn about why and how that takes place. But we did have a prior conversation, and it seemed important to me to experience one of these free readings so that I could speak from that experience. So we did that a week ago, and maybe it was a little longer, maybe 10 days ago. Anyway, the process was very interesting, and we'll get into that shortly. But she's an evidential medium, and what we've learned with prior mediums is that an evidential medium is somebody who is able to bring somebody in where they get enough detail that the sitter is the person getting the reading, is able to identify them by the detail given. And it's always enough detail that there's no way that the medium could possibly know that information. Mm-hmm. So that's part of how she does this. And she believes that this process of bringing people in who have passed is a spiritual practice. And she serves the Spiritualist Church and helps people connect with people they've lost to understand that they haven't lost them at all. Mm-hmm. So she doesn't have a website. She's not looking for clients. Nope. And I've never had anybody on my show who wasn't looking for clients of some kind or trying to sell a book. So it's, this is going to be a little bit different. But at times, her group will invite guests who are not mediums to join them, and they will give them readings. And this is all done online over Zoom. On Saturdays, they broadcast live on YouTube, and you can find past episodes there. And if you would like to experience firsthand what they do, then you are welcome to join them. But there's going to be a bit of waiting list, I would expect at this point. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In fact, when I talked to some of my friends about this, they wanted one immediately. They said, well, how do we do this? How do we set this up? So we'll get
Bring them on.
we'll get into this. So she's been connected with Lilydale. We have talked about Lilydale on the show before, and I've made a number of trips to Lilydale myself. Believe it or not, in all the trips that I've made to Lilydale, I have never gotten a reading from a medium there.
Oh, okay.
So I've witnessed readings and seen things take place. But at the time, I always thought, well, why would I want to know information from the other side? So that's a question I'm going to ask Carol as we get going. Something else you should know about her is that she is a death cafe hostess. And I thought, okay, why do I want to go to a cafe to experience death? And that's not what that's all about either. But so we'll get into that. She has assisted a woman who had died and been brought back to life. So somebody, we tend to call those near-death experiences, but they're actually death experiences.
Correct.
And she's worked with people with terminal illnesses, worked in hospice, worked with a number of situations that center around this death cafe. She is retired, and we'll ask her what she's retired from. But that's all I'm going to say about her at this point, because I'm going to ask Carol to reveal her spiritual journey from childhood until now, and then we'll get into that question and answer session. So,
all right.
Mike's all yours, Carol.
Well, thank you, Dr. Bob. So I was actually raised in the Lutheran Church, and I was a product of a family that was sort of split religiously, because my father was Catholic and my mother was Anglican, and he was excommunicated from the church for marrying her.
Oh.
So, and when I found that out at my wee age of 4 or whenever it was, I was like, they threw you out of church for marrying my mother? And I didn't understand it now. Don't understand it, back then either. So, but I was still given a formal religious instruction in the Lutheran Church, and it and I'm trying not to insult organized religions. I really believe that everyone should have the opportunity to practice their own faiths as they believe them. But for me, there were so many unanswered questions in that formal Lutheran setting. I just had to leave it. And so I went for decades without any formal spiritual support, shall we say. And to answer your question, my life was pretty data-driven. I was an accountant by trade. So that is as left-brained as you can get. Okay, talking about income taxes and numbers and things like this. And so by the body alone, there's a conflict there, okay? Because when you use this side of your brain so much to work, there's no room really for this side of the brain to grow, okay? Until I got close to retirement, okay? And then I had just a jaw-dropping experience. And is it okay to tell your listeners about it?
Oh, please.
Okay.
That's what we're here for.
So, all right. So I'll tell you how this all started. My sister-in-law had just lost her husband, and she was very much into spiritual things. And so I was not, because this was the side of my brain that was really working. But I felt so badly for her because she grieved her husband so badly. And I said to her,
what age was she?
She was about 55 when
Okay.
he crossed over. Okay. So I said to her, well, how about if we go away for a weekend? Okay. And we'll just go do a girls' weekend away. And she was a big believer in Lilydale. I was not. Okay. But I said, let's go up to Lilydale and let's take a class and I'll pay for it. Okay. And so I took her up there and we had this class and it went on all weekend long. And it was interesting. But when I was sitting in that class, I was looking at the other students and going, oh my gosh, these people were phenomenal. Okay. Just amazing. I shouldn't be in here with these people. I really did not feel that I belonged in the class, but I wanted to be there to support my sister-in-law.
Okay, it was a class on what?
Beginning psychic and mediumship development. Okay,
Oh,
and it was taught by the head of the Mediums League in Lilydale. Okay. Oh, okay. Yes. All right. And like I said, I just didn't feel that I was good at it. But at the end of the class, on the last day, the teacher stood up in front of the class and he took his finger and he ran it across the audience like this. And he's, now I want you. And he points directly at me to come up here. And I'm like, me? Okay, and he said, you come up here. And I said, all right, so I came up to the front of the class and I'm facing the students in the class, okay, with him. And he points to a spot on the wall and he said, look at that spot and tell me what you see. And at first I saw nothing at all, okay, but then something made me said, trust God, okay. And then when I did that, all of a sudden I saw something on that wall and I started to describe it. And it was a man, all right, and he was leaning up against a car that I described as long, and I couldn't identify it. I said, this is nothing made by Ford or GM, this is a big, long car. And he's sitting there with his arms crossed like this, and he's wearing a white polyester suit with studs, and he's got sunglasses on. And the teacher said, okay, what else do you see? And I said, I see, okay, spandex pants, platform shoes, and shirts that are open to the waist and show way too much chest hair. All right. And as I'm saying this, and it's funny because you're laughing. All right. As I'm saying this was a great battle between this side of the brain and this side of the brain, because as I'm saying this from this side of the brain is going, you sound like an idiot, Carol. Okay. But I couldn't even look at the people in the class because I'm sure they were going like this. Okay. Just could not look. Okay. And the teacher said to me, okay, what else do you see? And I said, I see sideburns. Okay. Big sideburns. And he said, do they look like Elvis's sideburns? And I said, no. And I said, I actually drew the sideburns on my face. I said, they're flat on the bottom like this. And then they have a curve that goes in like this. Okay. But they're more closely groomed than what Elvis's sideburns were. And he said, what else do you see? And I said, I see a night sky with stars in it. Okay. And he said, how did that man die? And just then everything went blank. Okay. And I said, I don't know. Okay. And all of a sudden a voice popped up from another woman in the class. And this woman goes, he died of a drug overdose. Okay. And so we went on. Okay. And then I gave the teacher a little bit more information about the guy. Okay. But I was still like very much in this side of my brain and sort of lost there. And he said to the class, does anybody know this man? And that's when I opened my eyes and I looked at everybody out there in the class and they're all smirking and going like this. Okay. And I said, I knew it. I'm an idiot. I knew it. Okay. And then the teacher said, I knew him. He was a friend of mine. And I looked at the teacher and I said, what? That was a real guy? And here it turned out that it was. And he was part of a band, apparently. Okay. And the name of the band was Stars. Okay. And the band was apparently, I had never heard of them. It's just not my kind of music. Okay. But they were a Kiss knockoff band. Okay. And apparently they opened for bands like Journey and Foreigner on the East Coast, this kind of thing. Okay. And I'd never heard of them, anything like this. Okay. And then the teacher said, all right, that's it. Class is done. I was like, what? We're just leaving this here like this. And it was just so shocking. But my sister and I left, okay, the classroom, and we were trying to find online if we could find this band, okay. And sure enough, I found a video from 1976 on YouTube. Believe it or not. And again, I'd never heard of it. Okay, never heard of this band. But what was really awful, okay, there they are in the spandex pants and the platform shoes and the shirts that are open and show all this chest hair. But the worst part is 44 seconds into that video, okay, the musician turns his face like this, and that's when you can see those sideburns that are flat on the bottom and curved in, okay? And I was blown away because this was so far away from my accounting background to get into this weirdo stuff, okay? Was the way that I looked at it, okay? And I was really struggling with coping with it, okay? But we were up in Lilydale for the evening, okay? And I went to bed that night, all right? And I did not sleep well. And just a lot of stuff going on in my mind. And then about 3 o'clock in the morning, I hear somebody playing guitar. And I'm laying there in bed with my eyes closed, and I say, what kind of idiot would be playing guitar at 3 o'clock in the morning? Okay. And then I turn my head like this, and I look, and there he is, sitting on the edge of my bed, playing guitar. The same guy that I had seen, who I knew was supposed to be dead. Okay. But what was different about it, it was interesting, okay, because in hindsight, I realized I must have been subconsciously insulting him because I'm a musician, and rock music is not a difficult genre to play, whoopee-doo. Okay, and I was honestly not impressed by his musician skills. Okay, so he's sitting on the edge of my bed and he's playing, this time it's acoustic guitar. Okay, and I can recognize from what he's playing that he's playing jazz this time, which is significantly more difficult. Okay, and I had been making fun of his platform shoes, which apparently he took offense to, okay, because he picked up his foot and he showed me that he had changed his shoes and now he was wearing these expensive Italian loafers, all right? And then he said to me, I wish I'd known a nice girl like you when I was on the earth plane. And then he vanished like this. And then I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, that could not have happened. Could not have happened. Okay, that's all in your mind, but I couldn't get back to sleep. Okay, and speaking to anybody who has had this experience or a similar experience, maybe with a loved one, there is an element of realness to it, okay, that makes you think that really happened. That was not a dream. Like you have the same physical and emotional reactions as you would to something really happening versus what happened in a dream. But anyway, the next morning I got up and I needed to get back to Pittsburgh because I actually was performing in a show. Okay, so that morning,
performing how?
I actually play with the Pittsburgh Banjo Club. Okay, so that's one of my gigs. So I'm a banjo player. But so I left because Banjo Club had a gig and I needed to get to that gig. Okay. But I ran into my sister-in-law and I said to her, you will not believe what happened to me. Okay. And so I told her this story. All right. And she goes, that's unbelievable. And I said, yeah, I know, but I got to go. I got a job. I left. Okay. But then I'm driving down Interstate 79. All right. And I get a phone call from my sister-in-law, and she said, you are not going to believe this. All right. And I said, what? So you remember I told you there was one other woman in the class who had piped up and said, he died of a drug overdose. Okay. That woman. So we had befriended her, and we were talking to her. So my sister-in-law told me, I ran into her this morning, and you will not believe what happened to her. She said, the same guy turned up in her room last night. But the weirder thing about it was he presented himself as being like different to her than he did to me. And she was in a room in Lilydale that had twin beds. And you're a tall guy, okay? So you know how short twin beds are and how your feet hang off the edge? Okay. So the musician that I had discovered, okay, was actually a pretty tall guy, about 6'4". And this friend of ours was in a room with twin beds, and she had laid her suitcases out on the bed. And here this spirit is laying on top of the bed with his arms outstretched like this, his feet hanging off the edge of the bed because it's twin bed, okay? And he looks at her and he said, I bet you think I'm hot, don't you? And so she looked at him and she said, no, I definitely don't think you're hot. Okay. But then she was comfortable enough with this that she was actually able to ask him questions. Okay. One of the questions that she asked him was, knowing how you died, because he died of a drug overdose. Okay. She said, knowing what your end would be, if you had the opportunity to do this all again, would you live your life the same way if you could come back? And he looked at her and he said, hell yes, sex, drugs, rock and roll. It was the best thing ever, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. This is what this guy told her. So, but anyway, it was an extremely traumatic experience for me, as you can imagine. Yeah. Okay, it was extremely traumatic, and I thought I was losing my mind. And thankfully, we have a friend in common who actually directed me to the Spiritualist Church in Pittsburgh. Okay, and I went down there and I told them this sad tale, and I'm like, oh, you won't believe what happened to me, and they're like, hey, you saw a spirit. That's great. And I'm like, this is great, really? And that's how I became adjusted to it, okay, through the Spiritualist Church, okay. But this is actually part of what the Spiritualist Church does, okay. And they have a service like the type you would see in any church.
Now, where were they located?
They were located in Wilkinsburg at that time. Unfortunately, they are no longer in Pittsburgh, but there are some spiritualist church around. I know your podcast is far-reaching, so I'll say I know there's one in Wheeling, West Virginia. There's one in Newcastle. If you go to the website NSAC.org. That's National Spiritualist Association of Churches. Okay. NSAC.org has a list of churches, and you can look to see how close the nearest one is to you. But as part of the church service, at the very end, the mediums in the church will get up and they'll deliver messages to the congregants from the other side. Yeah. And, you asked about not doing this as a business. No, we do it to serve spirit. Okay, so we have a little bit of a different take on it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that first time that you went to the Spiritualist Church, mm-hmm. did they connect to anybody for you that came through? Or?
I don't think the first time, but over the years, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. They brought people forward for me, and They do it in the same format that if you've been to Lilydale and you've been to like Inspiration Stump, this kind of thing, they're little short readings, 5 to 7 minutes long, and you get like just enough information, to identify the spirit, and then they'll tell you what the spirit wants to say to you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and it's the same way in the Spiritualist Church.
Yeah. Okay. I was recently up at Lilydale, and again, they weren't open yet.
Right.
But
right.
this was for a presentation of Wolf's Message.
Uh-huh.
It's a book by Suzanne Giesman.
Right.
And she was there to show the documentary, because she was touring with the documentary, and then answering questions from the audience, and then signing her brand new book that had just arrived the day before.
Oh.
That wasn't to be released until June 29th to the public.
Know that. That's cool.
But we were able to get autographed copies of the book. Anyway, so I've recently been inside the amphitheater, and so I understand when you said the big din that was that was part of that experience. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about then how you got from that point to doing these online readings on Mondays, Monday morning.
Actually, every day of the week.
Oh, you're doing them
we do
every
it every day
of the week?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was just a Monday that you were available to do me. Okay.
Exactly. That was the available time slot. But so we do, and interestingly, we have mediums that come from all over the world. Our furthest one out is actually in Australia, but we have one in South Africa. We have a bunch in the British Isles, England, Ireland, Scotland, this kind of thing. And,
goodness.
And who is there on any given day, just, it's whoever can show up on any given day. There are no rules. But for us, it's like anything else. Okay, you have to practice to keep your skills up. Yeah. Okay, and beyond that, we also try to learn more. Okay, because obviously there's a certain element that we know, but there's so much more that we don't know. And we're trying so hard to learn as much as we can. And that's why we go out there every day. There's a saying that says, if you set a schedule, Spirit knows it, and they'll show up.
Yeah. Okay.
And we firmly believe it, so that's why we do it every morning, 9 a.m. Okay. And they come in and support us.
And you host this?
I don't host it every day.
Okay.
No.
I was just going to say that's quite a schedule.
Yeah. No, I can't do that. But there are 3 hostesses.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we all take different days, to do it. Yeah.
That I feel better for you now. All right. So what got you from that experience initially to doing this on such a regular basis? Because, all right, so you got us into the Spiritualist Church. Then what happens?
Lilydale has a number of mediums who will offer training. Okay. And I'm saying this for the benefit of your podcast audience. If you're interested in learning about it, I highly recommend that you get a good and credible teacher. Okay. And the mediums in Lilydale all have to go through an extremely rigorous testing process in order to be able to work up there. Yeah. So I'm going to say to you, if you want to learn, why not learn from the best, right? Okay. Yeah. So I took classes for, actually it was a mentorship program, for 3 years from a registered medium in Lilydale. And he actually has left Lilydale, and now he is the head of the Journey Within Church in New Jersey. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
Journey Within offers, that's another great resource for people who are trying to learn. Go to thejourneywithin.org, and they have all kinds of online classes on actually more than mediumship. They have a great healing program if you're into Reiki or spiritual healing. Okay. And they offer those on Zoom as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mentored with him, and then I just continued to practice because, like I said, once you start on this path, it becomes a lifelong journey.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. One medium who I had on this program was Chi-Chi, or known as Reverend Rivera.
From Pittsburgh,
so
yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know her?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And how did that connection happen? Because
between me and her? Do you mean? I think I met her at a psychic fair.
Okay. All right.
Actually, because in Pittsburgh, they go on. Okay. There's too many of them. Just Google Pittsburgh Psychic Fair and you'll find one, okay, that you could go to. Or if you're not in the area, Google Psychic Fair in your area, and I'm sure you'll find one. But, that's what those events are about, okay? But be forewarned, the people who work those events will often do more than mediumship. Some are astrologers. Some are just psychics that will give you advice on your current life and current situation. And, then there are mediums, and the role of the medium is to connect to someone who has crossed over to the other side.
Yeah, there seem to be now a lot of tarot readers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I go to this too because I often find people interesting enough to ask to be on the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you lived this life in accounting, and you had a certain number of friends and family who saw you as an accountant.
Correct.
Now you're living this other life.
In the closet.
Oh, in the closet?
In the closet, yes.
Well, okay, we'll pretend that no one will watch this podcast.
Yeah, well, at the time, I was in the closet. I lived for like a decade in the closet. And the reason, actually, that is an issue, because people think you're crazy. And then you have to go through a certain period, get enough experience and say, you know what, I am not crazy. But at the time, I actually worked for a firm that was owned by a man who was an Orthodox Jew.
Okay.
So if I had said anything, that would have been frowned upon. And it's kind of interesting because, in their religion, they have the whole Kabbalah thing,
right.
But it's only for men.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't want to open that door, so.
Yeah. No, that's, I'm just checking on our time here. Okay, we got lots of time yet. Okay, so at some point then you did come out of the closet, and when was that, and how was that experience?
Well, I didn't come out of the closet when I worked there. I retired.
Yeah.
But then after I retired, which was 2 years ago, I just started to do more public things. And the big public thing that I've done is doing the live stream on YouTube.
Right.
Okay. And we do this live stream on YouTube every Saturday. If you'd like to see it, the channel is called the Evidential Mediumship Channel. Now we are live from 9 to 10:30 every Saturday, but there are recordings of the old live streams available there. And our goal on that session is to just show people what happens in a mediumship reading. And the reason for that is there are so many people I found who have lost loved ones, who are destroyed by their grief, just destroyed by their grief, okay? And in my personal experience, I grieved when I lost people that I loved, but when I was shown, okay, without a shadow of a doubt, that they're still there, that was a life-changing experience for me.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, and I want to share that experience with other people. So that is why, and it's sort of funny because everyone who was on the live stream was in the closet for the same reason, but we all share that goal of wanting to help people and give them peace of mind to know that their loved ones are still up there for them.
So this group of mediums who do this with you over Zoom, are they all members of the Spiritualist Church, or is there a broader sense of who they are?
Well, the Spiritualist, the NSAC, is actually something that is in the United States. Overseas, there's an equivalent that's called the Spiritualist National Union. But the point is that it's all, church-based with different governing bodies depending on where they're located.
Yeah. Okay. So you were, pardon me, you were, I'm assuming, headed into this death cafe hostess situation because you were talking about really wanting to help people communicate with loved ones and help them with their grief. So how did that come about, and how long has that been going on?
I first saw that courtesy of the Mount Lebanon Library. Okay. So, and I'm speaking actually to the Pittsburgh people here. Okay. But the Pittsburgh Mount Lebanon Library was sponsoring an event called the Death Cafe. And the library advertised it as an event, and they specifically said it was not a grief support group. It was a place where you could have a conversation about death. And so I said, I have to go to that. Okay. And so I went to it, and it was a fascinating experience. Absolutely fascinating, because there were about 30 people there. And the Mount Lebanon Library broke us up into tables of about 5 or 6 each. Okay. And then everybody at the table had a chance to go and talk about what they thought about death. And it is so interesting to see people's perspectives on this, because like that day at my table, there was a woman, first of all, who was terminally ill. She had been given 6 months to live. Okay. Then there was another woman who had identified herself. She came out, she said, I'm a scientist. And she said, Albert Einstein proved that when you die, there's nothing left. And frankly, that scares the hell out of me. That's what she said. Okay. And I thought, oh my gosh, you poor child. But you have to respect the way that other people looked. But I thought I could not imagine living a life where I didn't think that there was something else, after this life. Yeah. Do you understand what I'm saying? Sure. She didn't even believe in, even traditional churches, they say, you be a good person, you go to heaven, She didn't even believe that, And so this is the interesting thing about the death cafes. Okay. Because you never know who you're going to be paired with during the conversation, or what's going to come up in the conversation. But like one of the things that I remember talking about at one death cafe was, if you were given the choice, would you rather know it was coming, or would you rather have it happen like that? So what's your thought on that?
I'd rather let it happen like that.
And I'm in that camp. I'm in that camp too.
But I think it's a difference between people wanting to know in advance so they can live their best life for those moments they have left, and people who have figured out that I need to live my best life every moment that I have.
Oh, beautifully said. Yes.
So I may have started out wanting to know in advance, but now I'm living my best life, so I don't have to be concerned about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But there are many people out there who, they want to know that it's coming, and I think part of that has to do with the fact that maybe, they have unfinished business with
Yeah.
family members that they have to resolve and, this kind of thing. They want to see it coming. But that's the kind of thing that comes up at the death cafes.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
And all topics are welcome. One time there was a woman who had come in and she had had a near-death experience. Okay. So she had died and she was brought back. Okay. She told the group that when she realized that she had been brought back, she screamed at the doctors and she said, "Why did you bring me back?" Okay. And of course, this is very intriguing. It's like,
right.
Why? What did you see over there? And she told us, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
But the Death Cafe, for anybody who is interested in this, you go to www.deathcafe.com. Okay. And that will give you more details on the organization itself. Okay. If you're in Pittsburgh, there's also a Facebook page. Okay. If you go to Death Cafe Pittsburgh, do a search on that on Facebook, you'll go directly to their Facebook page, and they actually publish the death cafes that are going on in the Pittsburgh area. I can't speak outside of the area, but sometimes if you can find a link on the national website, they can direct you to local death cafes that are happening in your area. Or for that matter, you can set one up yourself. They actually give you instructions on their website. Okay. Some guidelines, and they're very clear on saying it is not a grief support group. It is just to go in there and talk about what are your ideas about death. Yeah. And you never know what's going to come up. And
okay, so you're a death cafe hostess. So what do you do in that role?
I bring the tea and the cookies, and then I also facilitate the discussion. Okay. And, and some groups are easier to start, than others. Okay. But I will I'll start off and I'll say, I am here because I'm an evidential medium. And I said, I imagine that there are someone in here who has a loved one who's in hospice care. Mm-hmm. And I am here to tell you, to let you know that it's very possible that your loved one is at some point going to talk about seeing people they know who have died. Because that's very common in a hospice situation. Okay. And I just want to tell you people, your loved one isn't crazy because I see them too. Okay. And then that opens up one conversation.
Or they think you're crazy.
Or they think I'm crazy. Entirely possible.
So where do you do your death cafe?
I contact various libraries around the city. Okay. So Mount Lebanon was one. Castle Shannon, Peters Township, because I'm from the South Hills, and I'm doing one in Mount Lebanon in August. Okay. And if anybody is in the South Hills and they want to go to that, oh gosh, come on over, because they're so interesting. It's a conversation that you've never had, and it's just such a learning experience to do it. But information for that's available on the Mount Lebanon Library's event calendar, if you're interested in doing that. But, I think you're from North Hills, aren't you?
No, I'm east.
Oh, you're east? Okay. Yeah. Well, see, if you knew of a venue in the East Hills, that would be interested in hosting it, okay, we could come out there and set up a death cafe out your way and see who could come.
Very close to the librarians in our area.
There you go. Okay. All right. Let's do this thing.
Okay. I'm going to make a note of that. Okay. All right. So you sound pretty busy, but let's talk about my experience.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So prior to having Carol on the show, I asked her if I could experience one of these online Zoom meetings with a group of mediums. And she agreed. She was able to find a spot in the calendar for me. And although typically you do these for 90 minutes, for an hour and a half,
right. Yeah.
I had another meeting I had to get to.
Mm-hmm.
So we just did an hour. And it was interesting. So one of the things was that you never know how many mediums are going to show up.
Correct.
But you did temper my expectations by saying it's summertime, so probably just 5 or 6. And in the wintertime, we get a lot more. But
right.
So maybe it was okay that I cut it down to an hour because we weren't going to have that many on.
Right, right.
And there were 5 of you, plus me, the sitter. And as they did a reading, or, as, the process from my point of view, and you can correct me.
Love to hear your feedback. Thank you.
Is that you just let the group of mediums try bringing somebody in, and they know nothing about me except what I had for breakfast.
Right.
So first of all, I need to ask you, why did you care about what I had for breakfast?
Well, and back up even before that, I don't know if you noticed, did you see I took your last name off of your Zoom thing?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
And that was, those standards are very clear. Okay, they only know you as Bob.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay. But the reason that we ask you, it's just intended to kind of relax you. But the important thing is that spirit responds more to voice than anything else. Okay. So that is our way of getting you to talk. Okay. And relax a bit.
So you didn't care what I had for
I didn't.
breakfast.
Yeah, we don't care what you had for breakfast.
You just wanted me to talk about something.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So as people were brought in by the individual mediums, you kept asking me, does that resonate with you? Does that sound like somebody you used to know? And I kept shaking my head. No, that doesn't. I don't know that person.
Right.
But a different medium who was on the call would say, oh yeah, that's so-and-so, or that's so-and-so, or yeah, it sounds like, give me a little more detail, but it sounds like. And they ended up doing readings for each other.
I know. Which normally doesn't happen.
And nothing was coming through for me.
Right.
So we're getting to the end of our time, and it's Carol's time to do her thing. So she asks me for the name of somebody who I would like her to connect with. And I found that really different, that, okay, so you can actually bring somebody in at their beck and call rather than wait for somebody to come in.
Not always. No.
Yeah. So I did something that I probably shouldn't have done, because I couldn't give you a lot of feedback, because I asked you to, I gave you the name of my birth mother, who I only knew up to age 3. And then she was taken out of my life. She didn't die. She was actually committed to a mental institution. And 7 years later, and that was the wait time that had to happen, then my father filed for divorce, and it was granted. But I was really curious about her life, not having seen her since I was 3 years old. So you gave me information, most of which I couldn't validate because I didn't know her that well. But you did see her holding my hand as a young boy and catching fireflies, and that I identified with.
Yeah. Okay.
You talked about her having bright red lipstick, but then everybody in the 40s had bright red lipstick. So,
but that puts a date on it.
Yeah, right.
That's the purpose
so
of that.
I was able to tell you, well, yeah, that's probably true, but I can't say for sure. So you gave me some other details that all sounded probable. That she was very intelligent, that she was known for her intelligence, that she was well respected, but didn't go to college. And there were a couple other details that you gave me that I guess I had seen pictures of her. So I did know what she looked like at the time, and she was a very beautiful woman, and she was known for her intelligence. So that was the end of that experience. But then I let my sister know about this experience. And my sister was able to validate just about everything you said. And that's some of the feedback that I wanted to give you, was that,
Thank you.
What I couldn't validate, she did validate.
That happens often.
She told me that my father told her that my mother graduated high school with honors, and that she was at the top of her class, and she was really known for being very smart, that she was a writer as well as an avid reader. And there were some other details you gave me that she was able to validate. But what I learned from my sister is that my mother had actually written a letter to her that she didn't open until she was in, I think, her late 50s.
Oh, my.
Because she didn't want to have to deal with that trauma of losing her mother at a young age. And she felt that by opening that letter, it would open up some psychological issues or some problems that she would then have to deal with. So as long as that letter was sealed, she was kind of safe from having to deal with those things. So she finally did open the letter. And it was a pretty healing letter.
Oh, good.
But then she burned it.
Oh, no.
Yes. Because again, she didn't want to deal with the past. Okay. And it was a way to say, okay, that was then, this is now, and it's gone.
Yeah. Well, this is an interesting conversation to have, because as a medium, ego-wise, everybody wants to hear yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. But I will say, when I've received readings, some of the most powerful evidence that I have received are things that I couldn't validate at the time. Uh-huh. And it's interesting because I have my younger brother is autistic, and he has the memory of the Rain Man. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I visited a medium, and the medium told me, well, this is your father. He's pointing to a pack of cigarettes. And, he's saying, this is what killed me. Okay. And he's saying the pack is green and white, and I can't tell what brand they are, but the pack is green and white. My dad died in 1980. Right. I couldn't remember what kind of cigarettes he smoked. Yeah. Okay. But I asked my brother with the Rain Man memory. Yeah. Okay. And I said, Jim, what kind of cigarettes did Dad smoke? And he said, Salem Lights, green and white pack. Okay. And so then the question becomes, if you didn't know the information, I didn't know that information.
Yeah.
Where's that information coming from? Okay. And this is the way that Spirit will show their love for you, which is so comforting to me, Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a friend who had terminal cancer, and he actually had a second home because he lived near me in Pittsburgh, but he had a second home up at Chautauqua, mm-hmm. not at the Institute, but across the lake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I went up to visit him and said, you should really see a medium just to get a sense of what it's like on the other side, just to feel that comfort. And he said, nah, I don't believe in mediums. Yeah. And I said, well, you might want to give it a chance. I mean, Lilydale isn't that far from here. He said, okay, I'll do it. So even though I still haven't seen a medium at Lilydale, I convinced him that it would be a good thing for him. So he did go to see a medium, but he was so skeptical that everything the medium said, he said, no, that doesn't resonate. No.
Yeah.
No, none of this is anybody I know, anything that resonates with me. So at the end, he told me what the experience was like, and he said, well, this guy, he just didn't connect anything for me. And I said, well, what information did he give you? He said, well, for instance, he asked me the question, do you know anybody going to Africa? And I said, no, I don't know anyone going to Africa. And I just said, Victor, Amy and I are going to Africa. You know that.
Yeah.
He said, oh, I forgot about that.
Uh-huh.
He said, now that you think about it, I have another friend who's going to Africa, a year from now, and he's setting all his plans. And he started to relate things to me from the reading, and then his wife and I, were able to say, well, what about this? Or what about that?
Yeah.
And he said, oh, I must have really frustrated this guy by just telling him he was way off.
Oh, my goodness.
So, it's what you were saying, that after the reading, you start to connect the dots. And
yeah.
And, I said, you really should call him and let him know that he was right on the mark.
We have a term for that. It's called sitter amnesia.
Yeah.
But it's okay, though. The whole goal is to, just help you. And it doesn't matter if you realize it after the fact. We're happy for you that you do, Yeah. So I'm glad to hear it.
Well, I could really feel that when I wasn't connecting for you, I just thought about his experience and thinking, okay, something will happen here.
Well, but I'll say to you that, like, the more you're in that environment as a sitter, okay, and it's a good thing for other people to know too, the more often you try it, the easier it is for the spirits to make the connection and for you to make the connections in your mind, So I'll just say, come on back, okay? Because we'll invite you back. We have to leave you out for 6 months so that we don't remember anything about you. But I will likely get in touch with you, I will get in touch with you in 6 months and say, you're allowed to come back now if you'd like to, okay? And then you see what happens the next time, and then you're likely see a progression there, which is kind of cool, it is.
Yeah, that would be fun. Okay, we are out of time, believe it or not.
Gosh, it's flown by.
Yes. So at this point of the podcast, I always give the host or the guest the opportunity to leave the audience with a few words. Anything, this is your chance with this one particular group of people to just leave them with anything you'd like to leave them with.
Okay. The one thought I'd like to leave you with is, if you are grieving, just know that your loved ones have not left you. Okay, they are still here. They're in a slightly different dimension. Mediums aren't. Actually, I'll say that everybody is a medium. Bob's a medium. I'm a medium. Okay, but some mediums are more tuned in than others. If you remember the old style radio that had the knob, okay, when you were trying to tune in a station, you'd get like this on the static, and then you'd hit the exact right spot, and that's when the broadcast would come in perfectly, okay? So I'm at the point with my radio knobs where I get the information loud and clear, okay? But all of you out there have heard little bits of things coming through that static, okay? Because your loved ones are trying to get in touch with you. So listen to those and then tune your radio in and see what happens, because you can talk to them directly yourself too. And if you don't believe me, then go to a medium.
Well, I have to tell you, I can validate that from a very recent experience.
Good for you. Yay.
Because when I went to Lilydale and heard the presentation about Wolf's message that night in my hotel room, I said, Wolf, if you're still around, give me a sign. And he did. He gave me a dream that night.
Oh.
And I got up in the middle of the night and I said, Wolf, come on, come through. And he said, I did. I gave you that dream. And here's what it means.
There you go. There you go.
So I'm a firm believer that anybody can do this.
Absolutely.
If you've got the attention and the intention, it's available to you.
Because we're all spirits.
Yeah.
So, absolutely.
So, audience, as always, take what resonates with you and incorporate it into your life. Put the rest on the shelf until you're ready to deal with it. And until next time, this has been your spiritual journey.